This podcast is part of the Zeo to Hero Podcast Network.
AvenuePodcast.net.
Hello, all my beautiful people. It's time for another fun episode, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. I have brought back on Justin Lee. We have talked about his wrestling career on multiple occasions, and this time he is my first three-peat guest, but we're not going to talk about wrestling today. We're going to talk about Batman. I know I've had an episode about Batman in the past, but talking with Justin, we realized that, you know what, we should probably have one as well, because we both have lots and lots to talk about. In fact, we had so much to talk about that this is actually going to be a two-part episode. I think the recording ended up being somewhere around 2 hours and 47 minutes or something like that. So I'm going to break this down. We're going to have the first part today. You'll get the second part next week. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. We'll give a spoiler warning towards the end of this first episode. We do have some spoilers that deal with the new Flash movie that came out. So just so you know, there is some things in there that maybe you might not want to know until you go see the movie, or maybe you have already seen it. So just enjoy this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And for those of you who are here just to listen to our Batman episode, or if you're here just to hear the Justin Lee episode, welcome. I hope that you enjoy what you hear, and I hope that you stick around and listen to some of the other great episodes I have here as well. So, if you guys are as excited as I am, then let's get this show on the road.
If you give a dad a podcast. Hey, Dad.
So where did you actually train at?
I made a really good career out of being able to bump, sell, and I had a punch me face.
I wasn't about to call you dad, so.
Seriously?
I felt like it was in an anime or something.
People get really mad at those videos for some reason. Like, it triggers certain people. Yeah.
Wow.
I was actually lost as an infant, and I was taken in by a traveling group of independent wrestlers.
I love it. I'm excited for this one.
Bro.
Get punched in the face on the daily. Do you always do these interviews with your shirt off?
What?
Man, this guy won't shut up.
All right, everybody. I actually have a three-peat guest on the show. This is the third time he's been on here. He is now the guest that I've had on the most. And it's funny because I was going to tell you this, but the first time I had you on the show, I was super nervous. And now, like I said, this is the third time that you've been on this show. And I'm talking about Justin Lee. He is a former Hometown Heroes champion.
We are talking about heroes today, right? I mean,
yes, that works perfectly. And wrestler out of Oklahoma. And like I said, first time I had you on, I was super nervous. And now this is the third time that I've had you on the show, and I feel like I'm not nervous anymore. I'm just excited to get in here and talk.
You're a grizzled vet of the podcast now.
Yeah,
you are the guy who can call the match now. You can take any greenhorn through 5 minutes of quality entertainment.
Well, the first time you were on, that was episode 7. So I was still brand new at all of this and everything. So yeah, I think I know what I'm doing now. I think this is episode 69, I think is what it is. So
the jokes just write themselves.
I know. Yeah.
I'm so immature. No, it is so great to be back. I'm glad to hear that I'm the first three-peater.
Mm-hmm.
That does make me feel good. I try to listen to every episode. In fact, I didn't finish it today, but at the gym I was at, I got through about the halfway point, I think, of Steven.
Okay.
That you had on there. I hadn't heard him name drop me yet. I know at some point he must have name dropped me because you tagged me on it.
Right. Yeah.
If I had to guess, I'll bet it's the story where he forgot my name during ring announcing. Is that what happened? Was that what the story?
No, he was just talking about it's more towards the end, and he was talking about how WSC has some really great talent there, and you were one of the first ones that he brought up. And
here I am burying him now.
I know, yeah. Well,
no,
that's
funny.
That heel side. So
he was doing that the commissioner gimmick or something out there for it was just kind of a one-shot deal. I think we're out in Wagner. This was probably November-ish, December-ish last year.
Okay.
and I was wrestling Tim Rockwell, and the match sort of broke down and turned into a tag team. Basically, my guy was cheating. They threw the match out, and Steven comes out there, and I'd already grabbed my title and left, and he says, no, we're going to make this a tag match. And he couldn't remember my name. And so he's like, other guy, get back out. And I could tell he was embarrassed, because he was just like a brain fart, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, but luckily I was the heel, so it kind of worked out perfectly. So I just kind of ran out there and said, don't act like you don't know who I am. I'm the best Oklahoma, so it set me up to be the, yell in his face and all that. But I figured that might've been the story.
Oh, that's great.
Because he just, brain farted and forgot, wait, what? Broken. Because he was like, broken, unbreak, that guy, get back out here.
Oh yeah, no, he was good. I really enjoyed talking with him.
No, he was. Everything I'd heard so far was fun. I didn't realize he'd been around that long. 23. I know he'd been around a while. I didn't.
Right.
I forget that there was wrestling outside of Oklahoma 23 years ago.
Well, I mean, you weren't there 23 years ago, were you?
I was.
Well, okay. So how long? You've told me before, but how many years exactly?
2001 was my debut match.
Okay.
I started training in early 2001, but I was doing backyard wrestling for 4 or 5 years before that, where basically, guys like Excal and, several of those guys were all still wrestling, so that's kind of how far back my ties to the business goes, all the way back to the mid 90s.
So yeah, you've been there for a minute then.
Yeah. It's God, don't remind me. But we are not here to talk about dumb, fake wrestling, are we?
No, not at all. We're actually here to talk about something a lot more.
You want to hear those stories? Go back, listen to the other podcasts, podcast 7 and podcast whatever it was. 57. But here on podcast 69,
nice.
We are here to talk about Batman.
That's right. We've kind of gotten close to this subject a few times before, and we just decided, you know what, we really actually need to have a episode where we just talk about this.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, yeah, we've teased talking about Batman and how superheroes relate to the wrestling business.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're going to go full-fledged into it. My love of Batman goes back to I would probably say I was 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
And I remember I grew up when I was born, we lived in this town called Bixby, Oklahoma, where Jim Ross is from.
Mm-hmm.
And Cowboy Bill Watts is from. So we're going to tie it a little bit back to wrestling.
Nice.
I grew up in Bixby, and there was this little video store called Showtime Video. And they had on the kids aisle the old Super Friends videos you could rent. It was a collection of episodes. And so my first exposure to Batman was through that. And I think there was a Scooby-Doo Batman, crossover one, Casey Kasem, but so like those 70s cartoon Batmans, because remember, this is before widespread cable and syndicate, so once those things weren't on the air anymore, you couldn't really go find them. So as an 80s child, I didn't really have access to a lot of the 70s material.
Right.
And so that was the only way I could do it. So I would rent the same videotape over and over and over again and watch those Batmans. And then in 1989, we got Batman, Michael Keaton. And that is when I was 7 years old, 8 years old, I think. And that just that summer of Batmania, if you guys don't understand, like that was as big a Hollywood movie as there'd ever been, as big a hype as they've ever put out for any movie. Yeah. Everywhere you went, Batman logos, Batman shirts, everybody had Batman stuff on. That was the summer of Batman, and that's when I went full-fledged into my Batman fandom, never looked back.
That's really cool. I remember, for me, it was I watched it on the Batman movie on TV, and it was my mom who hyped it up to me, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to watch the Batman movie?" And I was like, yeah, let's watch it. And she, we were at my grandparents' house, and I remember sitting there in my grandparents' living room watching the Batman movie on TV for the first time. And this was, I was probably 5 or 6 whenever that happened. So the movie had been out for maybe 6 or 7 years at that time, and they just
Wow,
played it
so
on
you-
cable. Yeah.
So I give you a funnier story than that.
Okay.
So when the movie came out, it was highly criticized for its level of violence,
Really?
and it was PG-13.
Huh.
But the marketing, of course, was to kids.
Yeah.
But it was a very, there was a lot of sexual innuendo, and especially for a comic book movie, up to that point, you had Christopher Reeve Superman, which was very clean cut and
right,
very, clean.
They made Zod look very funny, and sometimes,
yeah, and this one was kind of gritty and dark and very evil.
Right.
And my mom actually told me I couldn't go see it in the theaters.
Oh no.
She said, what we will do is, what would happen is, the show, eventually a year from now, it would be on TV, like on, ABC or something as movie of the week. And then they would edit it down for, TV.
Right.
So we'll let you watch that version of it. But this one, we don't want you to watch.
Okay.
Well, fast forward maybe 4 or 5 months later. And, when it would leave the theaters, it went to HBO first.
Okay.
Well, I just happened to be at my uncle's house, and he had HBO, and Batman was on TV. And I was like, oh my God. So I watched it, and I told my parents later, my parents weren't home at the time. I was like, it was on TV. Like you said, I could watch it. And my mom was like, no, that's the bad version. It's HBO. She goes, well, I guess you saw it, so it is. So
yeah,
once I'd seen it, she's like, well, I guess you've seen it now. So
I can't take it away from you now.
Parents.
Yeah.
They didn't want me seeing those evil things. I got it. It was kind of then you go fast forward to Batman Returns in 92. And you remember there was a lot of controversy on Batman Returns.
Right. Yeah.
McDonald's basically told the studio, we will never sponsor another Batman movie if it's anything like this.
Really?
They were embarrassed because all the Happy Meal toys were, they had the Penguin and the Catwoman and the all those stuff.
Yeah.
And the movie itself was, very dark, very sexual, very grotesque. Danny DeVito's. It's an underrated Penguin because of how grotesque he was.
Right.
And in fact, Kenner didn't want to make the toy to look like Danny DeVito, so they released the old 70s Penguin toy with just a new paint job on it, where he's wearing the top hat and he's got the monocle and everything. Looked for the toy line, they did nothing like Danny DeVito's toy.
Right.
Didn't look anything like it because it was just so dark. They're like, yeah, we can't sell this to kids.
Right. And it's a sad story too, behind the Penguin,
Oh yeah.
And
even babies in the river and yeah.
Oh, he's deformed. We don't want him,
Which is funny because who the parents of the Penguin were in the movie? Pee Wee Herman and the love interest from Pee Wee Herman.
Really? I'm gonna have to go back and watch that again. I didn't realize that.
Paul Rubens and the girl, I can't remember the girl's name, who was his love interest in Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
But that girl, because that was Tim Burton also.
Oh,
he brought them back in a cameo role to play the Penguin's, uppity parents.
Yep.
And fast forward to, remember Gotham, the TV show that came out about 10 years ago about young Batman.
Yeah. Love that
So
series.
that Penguin's dad was also Paul Rubens. They brought him back to play the dad again.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Pee Wee and Batman have quite the connection there.
That's you would never expect that either.
Yeah. And I think Burgess Meredith had a cameo as well in Batman Returns. I'm trying to remember. Either they wanted him as or he actually did have a brief cameo as just a side character during the Penguin thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, Burgess Meredith played and the Adam West Batman. We're going to get into Adam West Batman too, because that was my other intro to Batman. So I wasn't allowed to watch the movie until 1990. But during the late 80s, the Adam West version would air on something called the Family Channel. I don't even know if that's still around. It was one of those cable shows. It had that, and the Green Hornet would play on there.
Oh, okay.
The 60s Green Hornet as well. So 60s Batman and 60s Green Hornet. And so that was my introduction to Batman and Robin. And I would just get captivated by the stories and everything. And so that was the other version of Batman that I was aware of. And of course, I bought comics. I would go to back then you could get comics for cheap. You go to those vintage stores and they get them for 10 cents. And so I would go, my mom would give me $5. I'd go buy 50 Batman comics. And I still have most of them actually.
Oh, that's cool.
So I familiarized myself with a lot of the stuff. It took me a while to find Frank Miller. We're going to get into Frank Miller too as well.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about all the different versions of Batman.
Oh yeah. It's almost, you don't know where to start because there's so much to go through.
The year was 1938. That is the birth of Batman.
Man, you even know the date.
Yes,
okay.
Detective Comics 27.
So you are someone I was I meant to kind of poke fun when I said this, but you're like, yeah, actually it is. You have a room called the Batcave at your house because of all of the toys and memorabilia and stuff that you have for Batman in there.
Yep. And when you post this, you'll have to share those pictures I sent you of the room.
Okay.
And the Batman singlet I wrestled in as well. Not the first time I've had a couple of Batman singlets over the years. Yeah. Like I said, I'm a lifelong fan, and for very specific reasons that we're going to get into, and it definitely relates to wrestling.
Okay.
So first of all, we'll just talk quick origin of the Batman. There's so many fascinating elements to this, but for you guys who are just trivia buffs out there, Batman begins in 1938. So before that, you had Superman. Periodic Comics releases Superman as part of Action Comics. Well, so the deal was with those comics, it was a different hero in every issue, but if one was real popular, they'd bring him back.
Okay.
Well, Action Comics kept bringing back Superman because he was very popular, so eventually Superman got his own comic outside of Action Comics. Well, they wanted something as big as that, so they go to one of their guys, this guy Bob Kane, and they're like, "Hey, get us another hero." His original idea was Birdman, and of course,
well, there is a Birdman.
It was kind of like, So there's this other guy, and this was the lost story that we've only found out. Well, we only found this out a few years ago, a few years back. But the real secret origin is that Bob Kane really didn't come up with Batman. Bill Finger came up with Batman. So Bob Kane was the first one to say Batman. But if you go look at Bob Kane's drawings of Batman, it's this guy in this flamboyant red suit, bleach blonde hair, and a little domino mask, and these goofy looking wings. And Bill Finger is the one who creates the Batman look that we're much more familiar with. He creates all the iconic villains, the Batmobile, the backstory.
Yeah.
And so, all the best villains, best stories that were part of the origin were all Bill Finger stuff. So in recent years, Bob Kane, and now if you see any kind of new Batman movie or TV show, it'll say created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. And it used to only say Bob Kane.
Okay.
So his daughter has done a lot to go back and, she had all of his original drawings and sketches and all these original stories that, thanks to podcasting and things like that, she was able to go out there and share this information. And so we've sort of historically corrected this, but yeah, Bill Finger is actually much more responsible for Batman than Bob Kane, as far as the Batman we are familiar with. Of course, if you know anything about Batman, he is really just a ripoff of another character called the Shadow. Lamont Crane.
Okay.
Alec Baldwin did a movie version of it, but it was a TV serial and comic.
Okay.
And it was basically billionaire playboy, secret identity, fights crime, masked, puts fear into the hearts of his enemies. Only the Shadow knows. And so that was kind of really a lot of the early Batman stories were just, they took Shadow comics and just changed a few things around and redid the stories.
Okay.
In fact, Bob Kane, go ahead.
He had kind of a almost like a cowboy look to him, though, didn't he?
Sort of, yeah. He wore
had
a
the cowboy hat and had like the bandana.
It was sort of, kind of a, I don't know if you call it a cowboy hat or a bandolero, or I don't know what those are called.
Yeah.
But yeah, he sort of wore a little thing over his face, and he wore like a fake prosthetic nose.
Yeah.
And he was, but very much in the style of Batman.
Right.
Of course, they always say Zorro, Douglas Fairbanks, the swashbuckler,
Yeah.
and of course Sherlock Holmes were all, kind of Batman rolled into one.
Right.
As far as the origins of the character.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing was, to me, and this is really where I think I like Batman more than most heroes, is that there's a reality to Batman versus you can't really classify Batman, at least the original Batman, as science fiction because he's more of a cop or a detective than he is a superhero because he has no superpowers.
Right.
And versus Superman, so he was the sort of the juxtaposition of the two characters, which is really what comic books is made of, is Batman and Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Spider-Man being the third one that you would call the trifecta of most famous superheroes.
Right.
Everybody knows Batman, everybody knows Superman, everybody knows Spider-Man.
Yep.
And I don't really who would you classify as the fourth if you had to pick one to be the fourth? Your Mount Rushmore. How would you complete that?
I think the other one that it's probably the most recognizable. It's a toss-up. But I would have to say either Incredible Hulk or Iron Man.
I'd honestly have to go Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman is more well-known than, as far as, if we're talking Q rating, as far as like worldwide awareness of the character.
With more recent times, yeah, I would have to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just
now with the new movies and MCU,
right.
Captain America and all that, it's going to be more familiar, but historically speaking, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of just going off of which ones did I have the most comics of, and right. I had a lot of Batman, I had a lot of Superman, I had a lot of Spider-Man, and then Incredible Hulk, and I also had a lot of Wolverine. So
yeah.
But
all those would certainly be in a top 10. But is it as far as this is interesting to note? Of all the characters, who do you think is the highest selling licensed character?
Highest selling license?
Like the most valuable license. In other words, to put this character on something, he may sell lunchbox, whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
Who do you think generates the most?
I want to say Spider-Man.
It's Spider-Man by a mile.
Is it?
You could put Batman and Superman together and they wouldn't touch Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's the reason why Sony hangs on to that.
Things. Yeah. It's the most valuable superhero IP there is.
Right. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it's just, even now, you've had a string of superhero movies come out this summer and it seems like Spider-Man's the only one that's done well.
Right. Yep.
Again, it's just bizarre that for whatever reason that one works. Again, like Batman is still, to me, the biggest one as far as DC goes. Of course, Batman and Superman are the two pillars of DC. Mm-hmm. And you look at one is definitely science fiction, right? This alien from another planet sent here, can fly, can shoot lasers out of his eyes.
Right.
Not even slightly realistic.
Yeah.
Batman, on the other hand, can be 100% realistic.
Yeah.
And I think that's the appeal of it. The darkness of it. It started very dark.
Yeah.
In the first year of Batman comics, he was murdering people left and right. He would tell people straight up, "I'm going to kill you."
Yeah.
And of course, over time, they sort of retconned that out of him.
Right. He doesn't do that.
He was
anymore.
less murderous.
Right.
But he was always not afraid to kill. Think about it. People got mad at the Ben Affleck Batman. Oh, Batman murders everybody. I was like, dude, go back and watch Michael Keaton's Batman. Yeah. That dude had 2 machine guns inside his Batmobile. What do you think he was shooting at?
He wasn't shooting.
He wasn't aiming for the guns in their hands. He was mowing guys down. He straight up, Joker off the roof, and he killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
He killed a bunch of clowns at the start of Batman Returns. He fights that whole clown army. He puts a bomb on one guy and walks off.
That's true. He does. Yeah.
He's always been murderous, and and this is where we get into the dichotomy of Batman. So there is sort of a Batman for everybody, right? Because that dark, evil Batman sort of went away, and in the 40s and 50s, they said, okay, we have to sell these to kids. Parents are going to read this murdering Batman and not like this. So they suddenly do away with that. They make Batman more funny and friendly and brighter colors and always smiling. They introduce Robin so kids could imagine they're fighting alongside Batman and being the, with the character.
Right.
And, that of course leads to the 60s Batman, which was completely campy and silly and goofy. And really that's what people thought of Batman for many years. They just thought this campy, goofy Batman and Robin, silly tights, wearing your underwear on the outside and, saying all the goofy things that he said. But that's not really Batman. Like the Batman origins was much more Sherlock Holmes like, and people forget that Sherlock Holmes was a very dark character.
Yes.
The drugs and the basically like his need to process everything and based on trauma in his life. And that's really what they get a lot for me on Batman. And forgive me if I'm talking too much here. I feel like I'm kind of going on a rant, but
you're good, man.
We're getting into Batman's origin, which to me is the most important part about Batman.
Yes.
And it's one thing that people get annoyed at. Do we really have to see his parents get killed again? It's been done to death. Right. You hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I don't want to see another movie where his parents get killed. Right. But the thing is, that is the most important part of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you were to say anything was his gift, it was his inability to process trauma.
Yeah.
He has this most traumatic thing you could ever have happen to you, right? Straight up mom and dad murdered in front of you. You were supposed to die too. Somehow you don't die.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got this survivor's guilt, I have everything in the world anybody could ever want, and I don't want it. I want my mom and dad back.
Right.
I'm a billionaire. And,
right.
And he's so mad. There's nothing he can do.
He's a kid.
Yeah. I mean, and so he lives in that moment for the rest of his life. Like most people would say, okay, it's this traumatic thing happened to me, but I'm moving on. And every now and then I might have a post-traumatic stress, flashback, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna get on some medicine and, I'm gonna move on. And he refused to move on. He is still that little 8-year-old boy standing there with the gun and and the pearls all around him and the gun still smoking,
right,
holding his dead parents' hands. He is still that guy 40 years later.
Yep.
And that's what his superpower is. It's if we get into we're going to talk later about my best Batman moments, but one of them comes from a series called Final Crisis.
Okay.
So in Final Crisis, basically, Batman and Justice League have dealt with Darkseid for years, and Darkseid has sort of become fascinated by Batman because he's like, I understand Superman, but even Superman looks at me and he fears me.
Right.
You have no powers,
mm-hmm.
and yet you have no fear facing me. You have no you are the first one to throw a punch at me, even though I could shoot these Omega beams out of my eyes and murder you in a second.
Yep.
And he becomes fascinated by Batman. And Batman, to the point that he decides he has his dark agents decide and all these people basically steal Batman's DNA. They're going to clone him to see if they can take whatever it is about him and with his thoughts and everything and his memory and turn them into to their soldiers, essentially, give them the godlike bodies, but with Batman.
Right.
That
cool collection.
Yeah. But they said these dark, evil alien scientists that are making this, every time they gave it Batman's memories, the thing would go crazy and rip its own eyes out and kill itself. And you got these two alien scientists talking, going, how can one being live with this level of trauma and stress constantly? We've designed 100 clones and every single one of them can't live with this and they kill themselves immediately.
Right.
And that's where you get into Batman's trauma being his superpower.
Huh.
It's this never ending need to live in that moment, to take that moment away from anyone else that it might happen to. And it's completely reality based to a scary level, mm-hmm. because we think about what people have done in the name of vengeance and hate and this thing that power, that somebody could go, not to get too dark, but go shoot up a high school because they were bullied or what, these things that we know people are capable of, only, you turn it into a good thing with Batman's case.
Right.
This dark reality.
Yeah.
And that trauma, like I said, it just defines him so much. But the reality of what he does, the fact that this could happen, is what makes Batman the best character.
Yeah.
Again, any one of us could be Batman theoretically. Because outside of the money, obviously we don't all have $1 billion. but think about it, like you, Jared, could go down to the jiu-jitsu class and you can go learn, and if you train hard enough and you hit the weights, you could become you could become a fighter. Now, I'm not saying you might become UFC fighter, but if you put forth maximum amount of effort, you might become, a dude, legit tough guy. I'm not saying you're not now, but you know what I mean.
No, I know.
you can always train yourself to a higher level of ability to fight.
Right.
You could go to college and online classes, and you could, educate yourself about forensics and science. And if you studied hard enough, you could become a brilliant scientist or a brilliant detective and study all these things. There's all these things you could physically do, but it would literally require a level of dedication beyond what most of us could ever do.
Right.
And with Batman, he's the example of, I talk about with my wrestling, the 1,000 hours. To become a master of something, you have to do it for 1,000 hours, which takes about 10 years, really, if just at a normal pace.
Yeah.
To be a master of anything, to be a master of wrestling, you have to do 1,000 hours of training and matches under your belt to really call yourself a master, a piano player, violinist, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So Batman has basically done 1,000 hours at everything he could do 1,000 hours at, starting from the time he was 8 years old. He just trained himself constantly to know everything there was to know about everything.
Yeah.
To study everything you could possibly study, to train, I think they said 127 different martial arts he's trained in.
Yeah.
Every martial art that there is, he's trained.
Well, and he trained, he would seek out the people to get the best to train him for that as well.
Yeah. He lived with the League of Shadows and learned, learned about all these things, and turned himself into the Sherlock Holmes of, being able to look at a crime scene and solve it instantly.
Right.
Which to me, some of the best Batman stories, you see him doing that. That was one of the things I really liked about the Christian Bale Batman. They really played up the detective skills. Like they showed him reassembling bullets and finding thumbprints on, to do follow. He always had a detective side to him, coming up with very creative solutions to things.
Yeah. I really kind of like that with the Batman with Robert Pattinson too. It was him honing those skills almost, because I know this is a earlier version of Batman on that movie, and I like that.
He's what we call Batman Year One.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's been different versions of that done in the comics and things. I have a lot of issues with Pattinson. That movie got several things great.
Yeah.
Some of that Year One stuff it did great.
Yep.
But to me, it's fundamentally flawed at being Batman for a couple of reasons. We can get into those.
Okay.
One, he's too small. And they kept showing him shirtless.
Yeah.
So we could see this dude is not 170 pounds.
Right.
I'm sorry, but Batman has to be broodingly big. He's built. But I'll put it this way. I don't know that it's ever actually put into the comics, but I guarantee you 100% Batman takes steroids.
Yeah.
I guarantee you Batman takes steroids. For one, he has to heal, and that's what steroids were originally designed for, was helping people heal.
Right.
They used to give them to really the first massive use of steroids you see is post World War II, where when they were taking all these freeing these soldiers from these prison camps where they had withered away. They loaded these guys up with steroids before they brought them back to the States.
Right.
They took them to the hospitals to start loading them up with steroids to put size on them and to heal quicker.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want, they're afraid that people would want more. These walking skeletons returned home. It'd be terrible. So, but Batman, I guarantee you, would take steroids. Why? Because what's the risk of steroids? Well, it could hurt your health. Well, Batman wouldn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
If it helped me fight one more bad guy, then I'll do it. So I guarantee you Batman does steroids.
Yeah.
and it helps him heal and it helps him get big enough to beat the bad guys.
Right.
To fight somebody like Bane, you'd have to be on steroids to make your punches count.
Exactly.
I mean, put it this way, you could take the greatest Floyd Money Mayweather.
Mm-hmm.
He is not going to beat a guy twice his size.
No,
it's just not going to happen. Especially in a street fight.
Right.
He could box somebody his size, his weight class, but there's a reason we have weight classes, because at some point, it becomes like me fighting a little kid. Well, that little kid can have all the technique in the world. I'm going to be able to, just mow him down.
Yeah.
Exactly. If he lands a shot or two, I'm going to mow him down because he's not going to have enough size to hurt me. Just like I wouldn't have enough size to fight a truck. The truck's going to win.
Exactly.
Right. And so Pattinson being so small, they kept reminding us with those shirtless scenes of how tiny he was.
Yeah.
Really bugged me. I would rather, if he just kept his shirt on, we could all just say, well, maybe he's got muscles underneath there, and we just can't see him. Right. But no, they kept showing him in that skinny little frame. I'm like, no, I don't buy it one bit. And then at the very end there, where they have him leading the people into the light, and that can't be a symbol of darkness anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what Batman. That's the whole point of Batman, is to be fear.
Exactly.
Yes, people will fear him, but so will the bad guys.
Yeah.
He's not there to be a beacon of hope for people. He's there to scare people. And that's what Christian Bale's Batman got perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That scene at the end, they'll think I killed him. Why would you do that? You're the hero. Because I'll be what Gotham needs me to be. I will make them fear me.
Yeah.
Because the bad guys will still fear me too.
Yeah.
I'll make them think I'm capable of this evil thing, because they need that. I don't need to be their hero. I just need to do what I'm doing. And that's what Pattinson got fundamentally wrong, because I guarantee you they said, well, we want to do the opposite of Batfleck, and we don't want him to be dark and evil. We want him to be happy and loving and working side by side with the firefighter. But think about it. He didn't need to lead those people out of those people couldn't walk through the water without Batman walking in front of them. Of course they could have.
Yeah.
You couldn't have had any number of cops do the same thing, or first responders. No. So like I said, I get the imagery was to lead them out. But for me, it was the fundamentally, basically, you're not Batman anymore. If you're not a symbol of fear, if the bad guys don't fear you, what's the point of dressing up like a giant bat?
Well,
there's no point to it.
He also was saying, I guess I'm not vengeance. I need to be a symbol of hope, and everything is like,
and that's Batman is vengeance.
Right. That's what he says.
Batman,
I am
the animated
vengeance.
Series.
Exactly. So
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
Right.
Right.
Man, that's still probably one of my favorite all time when it comes to Batman is the animated series. Oh yeah.
Oh, and again, you're getting back into the best episodes of the animated series were rooted in kind of some dark stuff.
Very dark, yes.
Look at Mr. Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it's so sad when you see that, he's doing this for this woman and he's trying to save his wife.
Right.
And he's, you feel for him. There's some truth to what he's doing. You're like, I would probably do the same thing. I mean, maybe not the same way. I wouldn't be so cavalier about taking other people's lives, but if there was only one way to save my wife and, this cure and all this, that was so heavy for a kid's show.
Right.
I mean, talking about that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I grew up on for Batman. Yes, I saw the movie whenever I was, in like 93 or something like that. But that was my Batman, was the animated series. And I remember watching that and there being things, and at the time I might not have fully understood what was going on. And now watching back as an adult, I'm like, wow, that's really deep.
Oh, absolutely. There were one of my favorite episodes was the one with the gray ghost.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Where it was Adam West was the voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this, sort of iconic voice of Batman that many of us, like I said, I grew up in watching that in syndication. That was the only Batman I had access to outside of the cartoons I'd go rent until Batman, the animated series came around. That was the first live Batman of any kind. That came on right at 4:00. And so if I had something going on after school, I would miss it. I would get so mad. It would always make me so mad when I'd miss it. But yeah, I mean, now I will say some of the last Conroy stuff was not very good when they went back and revisited the animated series.
Okay. Yeah.
That Harley Quinn one they did.
Yeah.
And the Killing Joke live act or animated was not very good. I've always thought the Killing Joke was pretty not that great a story, kind of overrated story.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Killing Joke?
I am. I
okay.
I'm actually the other way. I actually like that one. So
well, here's the thing. Batman's kind of a pansy in that, and I don't like it.
He is. He's
like that weird scene where he's in there talking to Joker about, we can't keep doing this. One of us is going to get like, I just can't see my Batman ever saying that.
Okay.
Batman doesn't love the Joker. And that, he doesn't want to kill him, but he doesn't love him. He doesn't need him.
Right.
He doesn't want, we have to quit doing this, or we're both going to die. It's just like, what kind of pansy Batman is like worried about? Oh, how does the Joker's feelings?
Right. Because Joker kills people. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
He's this awful dude.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, to me, that was like just such a bad for me, a bad moment.
Yeah.
Now that it was a pretty dark comic. I mean,
it was
probably the darkest Batman comic there ever was, honestly.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't familiar with Killing Joke, there is basically, it's been out for 25, 30 years, so spoiler here. But the Joker gets another inmate basically to put on Joker makeup, and he escapes Arkham, and they don't know he's escaped. And he goes and to Commissioner Gordon, and was going to basically torture Commissioner Gordon by basically what he ends up doing is he shoots Barbara Gordon, Batgirl,
right,
and then he rapes her.
Yeah.
Which is very, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
For a comic, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
And then, it gets into and then he ends up like stripping Commissioner Gordon naked and hanging him in this abandoned amusement park, which for me is always kind of another big flaw is if there's a abandoned amusement park nearby, why don't we just start there every time?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's not wait for the clues to come in. Let's like, as I'm driving around town going, well, wait a second, that amusement park closed. I'm going to keep an eye on that. That seems like somebody's going to hide out there eventually. That'd just be one of my regular checkups. I'd just be like, let's just drive by the abandoned amusement park, the abandoned cat food factory, the abandoned, puzzle store.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
The toy store.
The Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah.
All these things seem like, you don't really have to be the world's greatest detective to see that one coming.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a very dark comic. And at the end of it has always been a question of, does the Joker die?
Right.
At the end of Killing Joke. And the ultimate conclusion is, yes, he does die.
Yes.
But it's an Elseworlds kind of story, so it doesn't actually count, except for we do know that Barbara Gordon is paralyzed from there on out, and she becomes Oracle. And so parts of it are canon, so we're not really sure what of that is canon, I guess.
I like a lot of the alternate timeline stories and stuff like that. Another one that's probably one of my favorites is the Injustice series. And I know that centers more on Superman, but Batman does play a big part in that as well. And it's all because of the Joker that this whole storyline takes place. So,
and you can see in Snyderverse that Snyderverse is very influenced by Injustice.
Yeah,
especially the Nightmare universe we see at the end, where Darkseid has taken over and used his anti-life equation to convert Superman into his minion, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So you basically see the evil Superman of Injustice and Batman teaming with villains like the Joker and Harley Quinn to try to stop him. We definitely saw a lot of that. It's such good storytelling.
How long did it take you? Did you sit down and watch that in one whole sitting, or did it take you like multiple times? Did you have to take breaks to watch the Snyder Cut?
I might have taken a bathroom break, but I watched. I saw Dawn of Justice in theaters 3 times.
Oh,
and then when Extended Cut came out, I must have watched it a dozen times. For my money, and I'll still say it's the greatest superhero film ever made. And this might be controversial, but the close second, Watchmen.
Watchmen is good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
And obviously, Zack Snyder did both. So,
right.
Huge. 300 is also one of my favorite films. So I'm very much a Zack Living Dead. So there's several really great Zack Snyder movies out there. His other one, oh my God, I can't think of the name now, with the three girls set in the insane Sucker Punch.
Sucker Punch, yeah. Okay.
That's one I would like to see a Snyder cut on, because I understand the studio didn't get his vision, and so they went back in and heavily changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so, which is kind of the story of Zack Snyder's life.
Right.
The studio's coming in and ruining everything. But yeah, the original Dawn of Justice, which actually, I was telling you earlier, I was going to get into my greatest Batman moments.
Yeah.
Number one for me is in Dawn of Justice.
Okay.
And it is not really Batman even. It is Bruce Wayne.
Okay. We
see him arriving in a helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We get no preface to this other than we see it. This is the day the Superman was revealed to the world. Is
right.
What the option says. First thing he did was jumped in a helicopter and flew to where this violence was happening. To where this thing was. We don't know why he's going there until we figure out there's a building full of his employees right in the middle of Metropolis, and he is going there to try to save his people. And he jumps in a car and is speeding through, and we get this almost 9/11-esque moment where Superman and Zod fly through his building and it collapses on itself.
Right.
And this giant cloud of dust comes and everybody's running away from it. And Bruce Wayne clenches his jaw and runs as fast as he can into that cloud, not having a single clue what is on the other side and what he's about to run into.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is the most Batman thing ever captured on film, because that is exactly what Batman would do.
Right.
He has no regard for himself. He has no regard for, he's going to figure it out. And that's what people didn't really get, is because, this is dark. This isn't fun like MCU.
Yeah.
Well, this really gets me into kind of how I'm going to relate Batman into wrestling.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, I run a wrestling training school, the Hunger Dojo, and I've been running it since 2020 now, so about 3 years, and almost 4. And one of the things I teach my students is that wrestling is not about moves. Wrestling is about moments.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling is storytelling. And if I walk up to any two wrestlers before they walk through that curtain, I should be able to get a very clear answer for one question. What is the story you're going out there to tell right now? Don't tell me we got this cool spot we're going to do. No. What is the story you're going to go tell out there?
Right.
Right. Because every match is a story.
Yep.
And every good story, going back, we go back to the Greek, the Odyssey and the Iliad and these tragedies and Shakespeare and all these things, right? We always have a protagonist. Now, the protagonist isn't always a good guy, but the protagonist is the person who we as the audience are viewing through this person's eyes, right? So we as in the wrestling business, most of the time, the face is our protagonist.
Yeah.
Right. He's our good guy.
Right.
He is who we the fans are supposed to relate to and see ourselves in him as he's going up there to do battle with this insurmountable force. Right.
Right.
Now, nobody wants to see a story that ends on page 4. Oh, there's a big bad monster outside. So I went outside and I picked up my sword and I stabbed it and I killed it. The end. That's not a good story. Right.
No.
Better story is, he smashed my neighbor's house and I ran up and the monster threw me 100 feet and, broke my arm. And I had to retreat, but then I went and found a way to, I researched how to kill the monster and I came back and this time I knew how to defeat him. And it was an epic battle and ups and downs. And just when he was about to kill me, I moved out of the way and I got him. That's the story. That's storytelling. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to create these dips and dives and this. But most of all, people have to be able to see themselves inside this character. And this is where we get into reality versus sci-fi. Mm-hmm. I could never be Superman, but I could be Batman.
Right.
We were talking about earlier.
Yep.
So we as wrestlers, we have to be able to be relatable, right? We have to be relatable to these fans, and we have to tell stories that are relatable. And this is where, so the best Batman stories are grounded in reality. They're grounded not in, you know, I mean, Justice League is fine, great, you know, all that good stuff. But the best Batman stories will always be Batman, this man alone fighting something that seems insurmountable and unbeatable. So we have to have an antagonist. Right?
Yep.
And Batman has some of the best antagonists we've ever seen in comics. Obviously, the Joker, right?
Right.
You know, the Joker is this. He's a juxtaposition, right? Because clowns are supposed to be fun and nice and kids and entertainment, and they're supposed to make you laugh and smile, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
he's not.
No.
He's evil. He's murderous.
Right.
He's without, you know, he doesn't even have a reason for what he's doing. You know, there's been so many great portrayals of the Joker over the years. You got to start with Heath Ledger as the best. I mean, that's just clearly a great Joker.
Yep.
And he's what we always call the anarchist, right? He doesn't really even have a reason for doing what he's doing.
Right.
He's just doing it. And he explains that in the movie with Christian Bale. He says, I'm just like a dog chasing a car. If I ever caught it, I don't know what I would do with it. I'm just doing it. I'm just wanting to see what happens.
Right.
You know? Oh, this will be fun. Let's see what happens. And he obviously, but he's very Batman-like in that he has no regard for his own well-being. You know, he's willing to do these things, and he knows he'll probably get killed doing them. You know, I survived it. Huh? How funny, right?
Right.
Now, you want to get into the Joaquin Phoenix Joker,
Right. It's a lot more psychological.
Yeah, you know, that was one thing I really like. I didn't love that movie. But I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I said, okay, you know, as an Elseworld story, this is interesting, right?
Right.
I did like the element of the story, though. They said that this guy had a brain injury. And that's what caused him to laugh at awkward moments.
Okay.
And I liked that. And he had that little card he would hand to people who would look at him weird when he was laughing.
Right.
And, you know, it said, sorry, I've had a brain injury. It causes me to laugh when I'm uncomfortable, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's a great little tidbit. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, explain that this guy, he was beaten up by his dad and caused a brain injury when he was a kid. And it just, okay, it's dark and you get it. And it's like, okay. So I would put him up there as a great Joker. I liked Mark Hamill's Joker. But it was very. It
fit well for what it was.
Yeah, you know, some of them are better than others.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so some of the animated series where he's doing it, I like. Some of them are kind of You know, again, like Killing Joke. You know, they brought Hamill and Conroy back for that, but I didn't like that. You know, when they did. Yeah. It just didn't work for that universe. And honestly, like I said, I have personal problems with the story as it was, and plus it was a very short story, and they tried to extend it by adding in. That extra storyline with Batman having sex with Batgirl and Robin. Yeah. And I was like, ugh, this is awkward.
Yeah.
I don't need all this. It's making me not like Batman, right? You know, again, it gets back to we have to be able to like our good guy. But again, we get to the great antagonist. And then Jared Leto, I liked his because his was also, and I know that's controversial. A lot of people hated Jared Leto's Joker, but I liked what he did with that.
Okay.
I liked the way he made me uncomfortable, and he's very showy and flashy and gangsterish, and in control. But you could also see he was out of control. Like there was just this craziness behind his eyes that was perfect.
Did you hear some of the stories behind what he did, like preparing for the role and things like that?
Oh, I'm sure he did all kinds. I mean, that dude is wild. If you hear any of his stories.
He actually like sent like dead animals and stuff to people in the cast, and like sent like used condoms to different people. And
like what he thought Joker might think would be a funny joke.
Yes, he would do little weird things like that to try to get in the head of the Joker. I just heard that recently, and I was like, man, that's kind of messed up. Weird. Yeah, he is. So.
Yeah. In fact, I remember reading not too long ago, he did a movie with Denzel Washington, where Denzel's like a cop who was, looking for the serial killer, and it ended up being Jared Leto or whatever. And he's doing this. They have this big scene where Jared Leto's been arrested and he's interrogating him. And they said that Denzel basically walked off the set because Jared was doing so much method acting. He's like, and Denzel at some point just goes, "Bro, stop. Like, just read the lines."
Oh, okay.
He's like, you don't need all this. This is too much for what this is. Like, and when Denzel says it, maybe it is probably too much. Denzel knows what he's probably doing. So if he says you're doing too much, you're doing too much.
Is that the movie The Little Things?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But he's out there, man, when it comes to a lot of what he does. He's just a kind of eccentric guy.
So, the funny thing about Leto is they said at the start of 2020, he took a sabbatical out to the middle of like the desert and lived out there for like 45 days. Which he was completely disconnected from reality, no access to anything, no phone, no TV, no radio, no newspapers.
Oh,
and this is right in the middle of when COVID first started.
Right, yeah.
So can you imagine coming in like to COVID 3 weeks in, going, what happened?
Yeah, because that started ramping up, I think, right around March or something like that.
Yeah. They said like he didn't come back to like April.
Oh no!
Like it was he was like gone at I think from February to April he was like on this like journey or whatever. Like poor guy. Yeah, but no, going back to we're talking about the antagonist. Batman, of course, he's got this great rogues gallery, but I always tell my wrestlers, it's like, okay, you have to defeat something, and something has like basically you have to evolve to defeat this thing, whatever this thing is. If you can defeat it in your original state, then it's not a story, right? We want to see this our hero has to go on this journey, right? He has to not be good enough at first and then get beaten down, torn down, learn something, reflect, come back, dig down deep, and then find a way, maybe even not then, maybe he goes through many he fails until finally, he loses people around him. There's major consequences, but finally he finds a way, to win, but he's forever changed by what he's gone through. He's not the same character from the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
The best example of that is Star Wars, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Luke Skywalker is just this, I want to go fight, and I think my dad was, of this, and then, through this journey, he fails and he blows up the Death Star, but the Death Star comes back bigger and and Obi-Wan dies and people die, and finally, he's dealing with this. How dark do I have to become to be able to beat my father?
Right.
And you see him forever changed by this thing. Right. Well, Batman, if we were just watching a Batman movie and all he was doing was fighting muggers on the streets that had knives, that's not a Batman story, right?
It'd get boring.
We needed it. I mean, it's probably what Batman does on a regular night, but nobody wants to see that movie. We want to see Batman face something bigger than himself, right? Something that he's not capable of beating. Excuse me. And so that's one thing I tell the wrestlers. It's like, this is why it's important that the bad guy has to win most of the match, has to win more than 50% of the match, right? Because if you're easily cruising through this guy, you're not having to dig through your arsenal of moves to beat him. Then there's no story there. The fans can't relate. They want to see you against the ropes. They want to see you knocked down and getting back up, because that's when they start to love you. That's when they start to relate to you, because it reminds them of what they would do in this situation, right? I would keep fighting. And then it makes, the bad guy's got to create this hate. They have to want to see the bad guy defeated. They can't like the bad guy.
Right.
And that's where I get on a lot of my wrestlers' cases is like, you're the bad guy. Quit doing all these fancy moves.
Yeah.
That's going to make them like you. Like,
right.
If they like you, then what's the point? Like, you're not a bad guy. I was like, you have to be a bad guy. You have to make them hate you. They have to buy a ticket to see you get your butt kicked. Right. And that's what they want to see. Right. You have to have this evil, this pure villain.
Yeah.
And that's what Batman had in spades, is these great villains that are so, in some cases, dichotomies of him, right? Because we go back to the beginning of our conversation here. Batman is based in trauma, right?
Yeah.
Well, most of his villains are also based in trauma, right? And it kind of gets into that one bad day, one different move, and you could have been me, right? And Batman sees that, especially in Two-Face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole point of Two-Face was, I was out here fighting crime, and look what it did to me.
Right.
It cost me everything.
Yeah.
I was trying to do it the right way, and look what it cost me. And Batman, often struggles with, am I doing this the right way? Is this the right thing to be doing? And to me, that's such great storytelling, because you always present Batman with then of course Bane was originally written as such a great villain.
Right.
I liked the Tom Hardy Bane, don't get me wrong, but the Bane, the way he was written, was supposed to be everything Batman was, only better.
Okay.
So he went through even worse trauma. He was born to in a third world country, to his mom was in a prison.
Mm-hmm.
So he grew up as a baby in a prison,
right?
Never seeing light. And in the prison there was a library, and he read every book in the library 1,000 times over.
Yeah.
Became super smart. He worked out, and they did the drugs experiment on with his venom, so he became strong. And he focused this trauma, and and went and learned how to fight, and he did everything without the millions of dollars that Batman had. In some ways, it made him better than Batman. And so when Batman first goes up against him, what happens to Batman? He breaks Batman's back.
Yep.
He destroys Batman. And Batman has to, again, we talk about it, your hero has to have an obstacle in front of him that they can't defeat. Well, think about that scene in Dark Knight Rises or the Dark Knight, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, no, it was Dark Knight Rises.
It was Rises, yeah.
Or third one, yeah. Where Bane just destroys him in the tunnel.
Right.
Breaks the mask, and like, to me, you talk about wrestling. That's selling, right? That's the heat.
Yep.
Right. Just putting the heat on, locks him up in a prison in a hole, in the middle of nowhere, right? Puts the heat on, takes over his city, and all hope is abandoned. He's running this city in a third world country, which they borrowed heavily from the Batman Dead End, not Dead End, Batman. Oh my God, can't think of the name of the story. Basically, there's this big earthquake in Gotham, and Gotham is in such disarray that the United States declares it basically a neutral zone that's no longer part of the United States. No man's land is what it's called. They declared it a no man's land. And so it was just, and Batman had disappeared, and so it was just,
okay.
That's basically what the inspiration was for most of Dark Knight Rises. There is a combination of Nightfall, and that Nightfall was the Bane storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Which I really kind of wish they had done. Getting off to another subject here, but with the Bane storyline, Nightfall, one of the interesting things was you had John Paul Valley show up and become Batman when Bruce Wayne's back was broken.
Okay.
But John Paul Valley was more of a vigilante that, he was doing all the things Batman wouldn't do.
Right.
And so Batman had to get good enough to come back and take down Azrael.
Yeah,
that's what they called him.
Yeah,
which I thought would have been a great storyline. I would love to have seen, Christian Bale, and you could picture any number of actors playing that character. Would have been amazing, but alas, we didn't get that. Well, unfortunately,
I'm very happy with the ones that we did get, though.
Oh yeah, no. Again, Nolan's Batman trilogy was one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's
probably my favorite.
If you want me to rank them, I still go Snyder's Batfleck, not Justice League, but extended cut. Snyder cut Justice League, yes, but Dawn of Justice Batman was the best version of Batman, because that is so close to Frank Miller, and obviously the Batman Superman fight with Frank Miller.
Okay.
So if you guys aren't familiar with Frank Miller, you can thank Frank Miller for Batman being what he is today.
Right.
Because again, remember we were talking earlier how Batman starts off this dark, evil character, right?
Mm-hmm.
He murders people, and he's he's this, and then they make him, let's make him kid friendly, and we choose Robin, and we're going on adventures in space, and talking animals, and just nonsense, right? Which leads to the campy Batman series, and
right,
everyone's like, oh, that's so funny, ha ha ha, it's goofy and it's silly, and big words pop up on the screen when they fight each other, neat,
bam, pow. Yeah.
The problem is, like, kids growing up in the 70s and early 80s, they didn't relate to that.
Right.
They didn't like that.
Right.
And so those comics were starting to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a point where DC was kind of done with Batman. They're just like, nobody's buying these Batman comics anymore. They're like, what are we going to? And so that's when Frank Miller comes out with, he's like, let me do a Batman story. And he does Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And it's this grizzled older Batman, and just this he's like a monster of a human being with his his size, and just what Batman should look like.
Right.
And it's this very dark and gritty Batman. It was the first dark and gritty Batman we'd had in years. I mean, obviously since ever. And really, that is what Tim Burton draws from to create Michael Keaton's Batman in 1989.
Yeah.
That dark gothic universe that Frank Miller was operating in. And so that when we got to see Batfleck and Henry Cavill fight basically in the style that the only thing
it came from
missed was
it came from
the only thing
Dark Knight.
If you've ever seen the Dark Knight cartoon or read the comic, he's got this great line as he's defeated Superman, but he won't kill him.
Right.
But he says, basically acknowledges, Superman, you're going to live forever, basically. And I'm going to die someday.
Right.
But I want you, for the however many lifetimes more you live, to remember, I'm the guy that beat you. And it was important that that Superman knew that. He's like, I want you to know. And if you understand that line, then you understand what Zack Snyder was doing with Batman in that movie.
Yeah.
Right? Because think about this. You've got this guy who, up until the day Superman comes into the universe, in that universe, he's just fighting criminals, right? He's fighting Deathstrokes and regular dudes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And they allude to that with the Alfred line of like, I miss the days of when we were, exploding penguin robots or whatever, all we had to deal with. But that some traumatic stuff has happened because you see the costume of Robin. So, Robin is dead. And the bloody message from the Joker's written on him.
Right.
On the costume. But you've got this guy who has this understanding of the universe that he's been trying, living in this trauma, but it was trauma he could control, right? I can be bigger than this. I just have to work out harder, study harder, be 10 steps ahead of every villain, but and I can control this. I can fix this world. But now people are flying and shooting lasers out of their eyes. I can't fix this world. I can't control this world. So what do I need to do? Everything that can shoot lasers outside and flies is a threat and has to be taken out. I don't care if he's saying he's on our side. It doesn't matter because one day he'll decide he's not on our side and then we're all screwed.
Yep.
So I have to kill him before he can. And so that was like, you understood that, he wasn't just trying to be a jerk and kill Superman because he didn't like Superman. It was, he's holding this little kid whose parents just died in the building that he was running, as they were emptying out the daycare. And he says, where's your mommy? And she points up at the building that's now in rubble.
Yeah.
And he's like, this just happened to this kid. This thing that happened to me when I was 8 just happened to this kid. Only it wasn't Joe Chill shooting a gun. It was Superman flying into this building.
Yeah.
It's Superman and Zod, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
But that's
it was almost like we can't protect ourselves on our planet with your people being here attacking,
We can't take the risk.
Exactly. There was one point that I always remember in the comic book, and Batman does allude to the fact that, I know you could have killed me if you wanted to, talking about Superman too. So he actually does acknowledge the fact, though, that, Superman could have taken him out at any time. He could have punched right through his head if he wanted to. In the comic, he even had to get, I think it was Green Arrow. Isn't it Green Arrow that shoots the kryptonite arrow at him?
Yeah,
while they're
he
fighting,
ends up ripping off Green Arrow's arm.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So he could never shoot an arrow again.
Yeah.
But the thing to remember on that too is Batman knows Superman can kill him, but he knows Superman won't kill him.
Yeah, exactly.
And he says that's the difference between you and me is if I have to, I will kill you.
Right.
Like you would never, you would be too bound by your own moral code to kill me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. And remember, so that was one of the other great Batman stories for me was when Batman creates the AI that essentially can destroy the entire Justice League, but then it falls into the wrong hands.
Right.
And they all find out that that Batman has a contingency plan for every single one of them.
Yes. Yeah.
And to me, that was such a Batman move. I don't care if you're my best friend. I would, if I don't, I have a plan to kill you. Like I have a list of the order that I would, of who I would kill and how I'd kill you, even though we're best friends. And to me, that was just such a Batman move. Like, don't trust anybody.
Right.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about my I've already kind of alluded to my 5 greatest Batman moments here.
Okay.
5 for me is the one I was just talking about, where the Batman creates the AI that can kill the entire Justice League.
Yep.
He's ready to kill the Justice League if he has to.
Yeah.
He works with them. he understands their importance, but also understands that at any point in time, any one of them can be turned, and I have to be ready to kill everybody.
Yeah.
4 was the Final Crisis stuff we talked about, where Batman, the Darkseid clones Batman,
Right.
to make an army of Batman, and none of them can exist because they can't. Only one being in the entire universe can handle Batman's level of trauma and stress. It's Batman. 3 is the Frank Miller fight between Batman and Superman, which is kind of sort of also captured by Dawn of Justice, the Batman Superman fight. Now, 2 so I'll put it this way. It's hard. One of the greatest Batman scenes in any medium is when Batman talks to Ace from the Justice League cartoon.
Okay.
So Ace and the gang that all look like playing cards. I'm trying to remember the name escapes me what they are. So there's one little girl, and she's Ace, is what she's called. There's the king, the queen, and Ace has this telekinetic power where she can actually alter reality around her, and she's grown too powerful, and she's turning the whole world, and converting these people into characters in her, imaginary play, and turning the city into a giant park, and essentially, and they're like, we've got this thing that can stop her, but we have to get close enough to touch her with it. And Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman and the whole Justice League are there, and they're all like, well, who should do it? Who should do it? Batman says, give it to me.
Yeah. And
he walks in there. He doesn't have any superpowers. And he walks up to her and basically was like, they sent you here to kill me. And he goes, yes, they did. He goes, but you're not going to. No, I'm not. And he basically sits there and holds her hand as she dies, because her brain is and it's this moment of he didn't go in there to fight her. He went, it's but his contingency plan was he understood who was a threat and who wasn't a threat, and what it took to neutralize them. But it also showed he has that Batman and kids are special to Batman, because obviously in his mind, he's still that 8-year-old suffering from that trauma.
Yeah. And
he never wants another kid to have to, suffer like that again.
Right.
And to me, that's a powerful Batman moment. So powerful.
Yeah.
Just maybe, like I said, the best, for sure, the best animated Batman scene I've ever seen. And when I think of Conroy, that was on the day Conroy died. I posted that scene on my face. It's just this scene, the way he delivers it, to me, should have won an Emmy. It's everything, why Batman is the best of all the superheroes. It's this guy. We talk about Batman and all his abilities and everything in that tool belt and all the special gadgets he has, and it wasn't any of that. He just walked in there and said, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to empathize with you, and that's how I'm going to defeat you.
That's really cool.
To me, that was just so amazing.
That's a cool moment, yeah.
Bruce running into the smoke is obviously, like I said, the best live action anything I've ever seen of Batman. Just so amazing. Honorable mention, and this comes from Flashpoint.
Okay.
And if you've seen the new Flash movie, it's based on a comic book series called Flashpoint.
Yes.
A comic book arc.
Yeah.
But they've made some major changes. In the Flashpoint story, basically Flash is tinkering with his ability to move through time.
Right.
And he says, I don't know if I should. And, he's been warned of the consequences, potentially the butterfly effect that we all think about. If you change one thing in the past, it could affect, even something as stepping on a butterfly, or, a butterfly flapping its wings at a different moment in time. Then, it could change, the course of all of human history. We don't know. So it's best not to do it. But Barry wants to know what it would be like if he could have saved his mom the night she got killed. And so he does. And, but what we learn is that because of, this goes back to Einstein, essentially, it doesn't work like Back to the Future, where you just create one divergent line. And if you can just go back and undo, then the original timeline restores. What we find is that because time is not a line, but rather sort of an infinite loop of things, and that affecting any moment on the timeline can affect things in the timeline in every direction. So even though he only goes back to his childhood, things he does affects things that happened 50, 60 years before he was ever born.
Right.
And, the history is forever changed.
Yeah.
And one of the things that changes is that on the night Batman's parents were shot, instead of Batman's parents being shot, young Bruce Wayne is shot.
Right.
And he dies.
Yep.
and his dad is so overcome with trauma and anger that he becomes this vigilante that with guns and this evil version of Batman, essentially.
Right.
That just,
kills
he doesn't fight with his fist necessarily, just kills people.
Right.
And bad guys. And his mom becomes
The
so
Joker.
overcome with grief that she becomes the Joker.
Yep.
And there's this long story about Batman's dad has to help Flash, and Flash has to save that universe, and then he basically has to undo his saving his mom and come back to our timeline. So somehow he finds a way to come back to the timeline. But he brings back with him a letter from Batman's father to Bruce.
Okay.
And we don't really know all the contents of the letter, but the final panels is Bruce starts to read this letter, and you see kind of Flash looking in the background at him, and he kind of pulls the mask off, and you see Batman start crying. And it's like the 8-year-old boy in the trauma got to hold it, talk to his dad one last time.
Yeah.
And it was like, that to me is also one of the, and one of the things I was sad that we didn't get that in the new Flash movie. Spoiler alert. Because they gave the role of Batman's dad in this universe. Instead, they did Michael Keaton's Batman.
Right.
So it's just another Bruce Wayne version.
Yeah.
So there is nothing to send back in time to modern day Ben Affleck, which, again, spoiler alert, we see the end of Batfleck because he's no longer Batman in the new universe.
Yeah.
I won't tell you who's Batman in the new universe, but that version of Batman no longer exists in the universe he came back to. So
there actually is somebody that I want to ask you about. It's somebody I would like to see play Batman, and he's actually voiced him in a comic book or in a cartoon. And that's Jensen Ackles. He's the actor from Supernatural.
He's in The Boys on the.
Yes, he's in The Boys. Yeah, as Soldier Boy. And he at a con recently, they asked him if he was going to be playing Batman, and he said that would be cool. He said, I can't say yes, I can't say no. He's like, but that would be really cool. And I know that's something that he's always wanted to do. So that would be one that I would like to see play Batman.
So here's the thing, and this kind of gets into a bigger problem with comic books movies right now. I think we are living on borrowed time as far as people are kind of over the superhero. I mean, I know they still make a bunch of money, but I think people are sort of superhero fatigued.
Yeah.
And one of the things you saw the DCU, this whatever version, now that James Gunn's in charge of the new DC universe. I honestly don't see DC movies ever making money again.
You don't think they'll have a turn like Marvel did?
No, I think Marvel's in trouble too. Marvel's last few haven't done great. They've had a few flops. And their TV division is really suffering. The fact they slashed half their projects, and they said let's just focus on one or two things, and because people are getting overloaded. But the problem is you have this Marvel versus DC mentality. So whereas somebody like me who goes and watches both and enjoys both, there's a lot of people who won't go support a DC movie because they feel like it's like cheating on their football team or something. So and because think about it, like the Flashpoint was a great movie. By all measures, it was a great movie, and it did poorly.
Well, it was because of the actor. A lot of people didn't want to go watch him.
Yeah, but think about it. Do people still listen to Thriller? I mean, he does. Michael Jackson was a terrible guy. People still go listen to Thriller. I don't know that. To me, that people say, "Oh, Ezra Miller was just," look, I like him or hate him. He does a great job acting in this movie. Well, see, I didn't like him in the Justice League movies, though. I didn't like his portrayal of the character, so I'm hoping that it's better than what it was in those. I put it this way, and without being too spoilerish. Again, Barry and Batman, you kind of see that they really lay it out in this movie. They're sort of drawn together by their shared trauma, right? Both of them witnessed a parent die. Batman saw both his parents die in some ways, Barry got it worse because his dad was blamed for his mom's murder. So he's lived his whole life with his dad in prison, being blamed for a murder. He knows that, his dad didn't commit,
right?
Because his dad walked in after the murder, and so he knows it wasn't his dad. And so his whole life has become, he became a police forensics expert, just so he could hopefully find a way to prove his dad's innocence.
Yep.
And so Batman and Superman, Batman and Flash, Bruce and Barry, they share a couple scenes in this movie where they both, you kind of see like, you're kind of like basically say, you're kind of my best friend, you're kind of my only friend.
Yeah.
And it's because of that shared trauma.
Right.
And so this guy is sort of autistic, sort of on the spectrum.
Okay.
Because he's so obsessed with proving his dad's innocence.
Right. Okay.
Well, now he goes back and he stops the thing from happening, and he meets a version of himself who's like 22 and didn't have this trauma happen. And he's acting in the scene with himself. Only it's 20-year-old him versus 30 whatever year old him.
Right.
And he hates 20-year-old him. Can't stand 20-year-old him. And it's this really kind of poignant moment of like, when I'm sitting there in the theater, I'm watching this, I'm going, wow, what if I went back and had a conversation with 20-year-old me? Would I like me? Would I be mad at me? But think about that. Like, if you saw college Jared, and you came back and you saw how he was living his life and all the things that he didn't care about and wasn't worrying about that you have to worry about on a daily basis, you get mad at him.
Oh, I'd kick his ass.
Not like that. Yeah. And you've got Barry, who's defined by this trauma, meets a version of himself that never had this trauma.
Yeah.
And he's lighthearted and fun and a slacker, and he likes, smoking the weed and hitting on girls. And it's his version of Barry that, he doesn't understand because he's not like that.
Yeah.
And so the acting is actually quite brilliant and funny at the same time. There's a levity to it, but there's these poignant moments where you can see he hates himself. And it's really well portrayed in the acting. And so, like I said, like him or hate him, Ezra does a good job acting in the movie. Right. You can't take that away from him, even despite all the nonsense that he's been doing and obviously
done in his real life. Yeah.
It sounds to me like he's a mentally disturbed person. He probably needs a lot of help.
Right.
But some of the best artists of our lives are very mentally disturbed people.
That's very true.
There's a certain amount of like, you almost have to be a little crazy. I'm thinking about pro wrestlers. It's hard to find, some of them represent themselves as being very well adjusted, but think about it, just to be even attracted to what it is we're doing as pro wrestlers, you'd have to be crazy if you describe that as somebody. You're going to go put your body through a car wreck every week to pretend to have fights with people. It's just like, for male soap opera, you'd be like, pass. That's weird.
So you saying that brings something up to me. There was, I had Iceman Howard on the show.
Yeah.
And he brought up
old nosebreaker himself.
That's right. He
we're cool. I like him.
So we were talking about one of his matches, and he's like, I got knocked out in that match. And he was like, the next word out of his mouth was, it was great. So you do have to have a little bit off there because, getting knocked out, usually people aren't happy about that. But it's like, it was a great match. And even though I got knocked out, I loved it.
Yeah, a certain amount of war story, football player, telling their old football traumas that they had during a game. I played the rest of that game with 3 broken fingers and a fractured whatever. Yeah. There's a certain amount of machoism to it as well.
Oh yeah.
No. Like I said though, it's he does a good job in the film. Like I said, I think at this point people hate DC, and I don't think there's anything James Gunn's going to do to change that. The Marvel fans hate DC. They're not going to go see the movies.
I also think that there's just a certain level of comic book fans in general are haters for the most part, and they're going to find something to complain about with anything, no matter what it is.
Yeah. I think, they're probably making another Pattinson Batman movie.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't do well, then that'll be the end of that.
Right.
I know they're making a Penguin series for HBO Max based on that universe. I know he's basically casting the new Superman Legacy is what he's called it. with basically a kid that looks exactly like Henry Cavill. So it's like, okay, obviously not doing anything new here.
Right.
I don't think the fans are going to respond to that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen the Superman origin story within the past 10 years. So we really want to see it again.
No.
And that's the hard thing. When you're telling stories, you got to find new ways to tell them.
Right.
But there's not a lot of new ways to tell some of these stories without making too many changes that people aren't going to like.
Well, see, and that was another thing that I did like about the Batman with Robert Pattinson is they didn't shy away from this is why he is this way, but they also didn't say, okay, we have to retell that word for word at the beginning of it's not the same from every other movie, where it starts out with Batman as a kid and his parents dying.
Right. They skip the pearls. Yeah.
They skip the pearls, but they're like, don't forget about that though. They make sure, even when they show the other kid, that the mayor's son, they made sure to be like, okay, I see him as me almost in that movie. And I liked that, they didn't have to retell that story, but they did tell it still.
Generic audio commercial, Zeo to Hero, take 43. Hey, listener, it looks like you're having fun over here. Listening to insert generic name here. If you like what you're listening over here, come on over to the Zeo to Hero podcast, where you can join Billy and myself, the bulk and skull of podcasting. If you want to listen to Ranger Powers, and you want to go into and talk about anime, Gundam... Oh, what did I make up wrong?
You're supposed to say Zeo to Hero is the best, and Billy and Jim as bulk and skull of podcasting is funnier than any other show out there. And you didn't say Power Rangers right. Get out of here. Do it again.
Dang it. Fine. Generic audio commercial, Zeo to Hero, take number 44. Hey, listener, it looks like you're having fun over here. Listening to insert generic name here.
God!
Oh, come on!
Hey, everyone, this is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the Talk of Wrestling. We are on today because of you. And in order to continue the podcast and get the guests on here that require some financial compensation, we're going to need help from people like you. Right now, we're attempting to get our YouTube videos monetized through YouTube. We need 1,000 subscribers in order to do that. So I have decided that if the 1,000 subscriber will get a free t-shirt like this from me and come on the show as a guest on the podcast. So subscribe today, and that 1,000 subscriber will be contacted by me and be given a t-shirt and come on the show. So subscribe today. If you already have, thank you. If you haven't, please do, and tell your friends, and subscribe today, and we'll talk to you soon, and enjoy the podcast.
All right, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed that episode, or at least part one of an episode with Justin Lee where we talk about Batman. And had a lot of fun doing it, and I can't wait for you guys to hear part two next week. It's going to be a blast just like this one was. We will continue right where we left off, where we was talking about the Batman with Robert Pattinson. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. This was a lot of fun. The night that we recorded this, I think I maybe got about 5 hours of sleep because we were I was up till at least 1 o'clock in the morning, because I had the recording with him and everything like that. And then I had to, download it to the computer and all that fun stuff. For all of my podcasters out there, you know what I'm talking about. It isn't just record and you're done. You have stuff that you got to do afterwards as well. So, and it was worth it. I really enjoyed recording this episode with Justin, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy part two as much as you did part one. So make sure that you tune back in next week so you will catch that one. I got another episode that's coming up after that one, and I've already recorded it as well. You might have seen me post a picture of me and Alexander Gold. He is the Ruthless King out of Diamond State Wrestling. I think you guys are really going to enjoy that episode. I actually did a live interview in the ring, in a wrestling ring for the first time. I've never done that before, so that was a really cool experience that I got to do. And I'm really excited to see what's happening there with them. So stay tuned and make sure that you listen to that really great episode with Xander Gold. So as you're listening to this, make sure that you go out and you rate and review this episode. If you like what you hear, let me know. The more people that rate and review this show, the more likely I am to be recommended to someone else. And so tell people about this show. Tell them if you like it. Tell them if you don't even, let me know what you think of this show. And also go out there and follow me on all the social medias. You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Snapchat. And I'm also on Threads now as well. So make sure that you're following me in all of those different places. I post stuff out there to interact with you guys as much as I possibly can. Yeah, so, just make sure that you're out there following me on all those so you can keep up to date with everything that's going on with iGadapp. So I want to give a shout out to my podcast networks. As you know, I'm part of a new one, and that is the OIW Podcast Network. There is a bunch of good shows there. Make sure that you go out there, go to their website, and look them up and all of their different shows. I love these guys. They're great. I'm also part of the OIW Podcast Network. Great group of guys there as well. They have all kinds of different shows. A lot of wrestling shows and stuff like that. So it's really cool that I'm able to be a part of that network. And I'm also part of the Avenue Podcast Network. They have a variety of different shows for you to find out there as well. All of these different networks have great shows that you can find, whether it be a travel podcast, a wrestling podcast, fan fiction. If you like fan fiction that deals with Power Rangers or really just about anything you can think of. If you like original stories, you can find it on any of these networks. Or if you want to hear somebody talk about toys, we've even got that too. So make sure that you go and look at all three of these podcast networks because they all have wonderful shows for you guys to go and listen to while you're waiting on a new episode of iGadapp. So I've said it before, and I'll tell you again, I have merch out. I have shirts. I have mugs, I have stickers, and I'll be having more stuff come out here soon. So if you need any of that stuff, make sure that you hit me up for merch. You can go on my Facebook page and send me a message and say, hey, I'd like one of those iGadapp shirts, and we'll get you all set up. All different kinds of sizes, all different colors and everything like that. And I plan on coming out with a new design probably here pretty soon that's a little bit more fun than just my logo and everything. So yeah, make sure that you go out there and get the merch. My wife actually makes all that stuff for me, and she has her side hustle called Cups and Teas by Stasha. She makes all of this, and she can make this stuff for you. She does custom work. She can pretty much make whatever you want her to. So, go out there and hit her up. All of this stuff that I've been talking about will be in my show notes. So make sure you look at my show notes and you'll see the links to all of these great different people. Also, I want to give a shout out to Nick Helms and the original Geek Comics for giving me a chance to have an advertisement in their new comic book that's coming out called Paladin. Can't wait for that to come out. It should be here in August, I believe, is when the first one will be shipped to me. I'm very excited about it. I will get that. And then they also have Vengeance that you can listen to. But make sure that you follow them. I'll have a link to their stuff as well. Get your comic books from them. And, help out those local people and everything. Great comics, great people. And it's a lot of fun. Also, I want to give a shout out to D-Cure. He is the guy who makes my ending theme song music for me. You hear it at the end of the show after I tell you that I love you. And you know what? He's a great guy. And he makes great music. And they're just very excited to have him to do that for me. So I'm going to start doing something a little bit different before I sign off here. Since this is a dad podcast, I think it's only fitting that I have a dad joke at the end of these episodes. So we'll start out with the first one. And it is, why don't eggs make jokes? Because they might get cracked up. All right, y'all. I love you. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Give a damn. podcast on. He calls us beautiful people, then tells us who we have on. The best part of my day, though we're blocked out in my pods. Tell my friends all about it so that they follow along. And the host is kinda nerdy, but guess what, I am as well. I don't feel so alone and I began walking out of my shell. Heard a story, I need a connection I haven't felt. I'll be looking for the next one, till then farewell. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. And listen closely. Download and tune in remotely. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. And listen closely. Download and tune in remotely.
This podcast is part of the OIW Podcasting Network.